My name is Mark. I am 46 years old, and for 7 years I believed I had built a family. Not joined one. Built one. When I married Nicole, she had 2 children from her first marriage. Owen was 17, thin and sharp-tongued, already carrying the resentment of a boy who thought every new man was trying to replace his father. Grace was 14, quieter but watchful. She measured everything I said against the memory of a man who appeared twice a year with expensive gifts and disappeared before anything difficult had to be done. Their biological father was good at entrances. I was good at staying. I owned a small HVAC company. Nothing glamorous. 6 employees, 3 service trucks, a cramped office that smelled of dust, coffee, and machine oil. In summer, I climbed into attics hot enough to blur my vision. In winter, I crawled beneath houses where frozen pipes split open above my head. Every dollar came hard. And almost every dollar went home. I paid the mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, phone plans, repairs, vacations. When Owen needed a car, I helped buy it. When Grace's transmission failed, I covered the repair without asking for repayment. I paid registration fees, medical deductibles, school expenses, and the silent emergencies that seemed to arrive every month. Their father sent birthday texts. Sometimes. Still, I told myself presents mattered more than blood. I attended graduations. I changed tires in the rain. I sat through arguments, breakups, illnesses, and slammed doors. I never demanded they call me Dad. I only hoped they would eventually see me as something more than the man standing beside their mother. For a while, I thought they did. Then gratitude became expectation. Expectation became entitlement. And entitlement became contempt. They stopped asking whether I could afford things. They simply told me what needed to be paid. Nicole began doing the same. Owen needs new tires. Grace already booked the hotel. The phone bill is due. You'll handle it, right? Always that word. Handle. As if I were not a husband or stepfather, but a machine built to absorb pressure. I ignored the first cracks because I loved them. Or perhaps because I was afraid to admit they did not love me in the same way. Then one Tuesday afternoon, while I was standing beside a dead compressor at a grocery store, my phone vibrated. Bank alert. Withdrawal, $35,000. For several seconds, I stared at the screen without understanding it. $35,000 was not spending money. It was payroll, inventory, emergency reserves. It was months of crawling through heat and filth while other people slept comfortably. I called the bank immediately. The withdrawal had been authorized through an account Nicole could access. I drove home without finishing the job. Nicole was in the kitchen. Owen sat at the table, scrolling through his phone. Grace stood near the counter, avoiding my eyes. I placed my phone on the table. "Where is the money?" Nicole exhaled slowly, as though I were already exhausting her. "It was for something important." "What?" Owen answered before she could. "A business opportunity. Training equipment, enrollment fees, and a vehicle deposit." I told Mom. I looked at him. "You took $35,000 from my account." He shrugged. "You have the money." The room went silent. I asked him whether he understood how many years it had taken me to build that reserve. His face did not change. Then he said the words that finally stripped the illusion from my life. "You have to. If you don't like it, just leave." I waited for Nicole to defend me. She did not. Instead, she lowered her voice and said, "Mark, don't make a scene. You'll earn it back anyway." Something inside me went still. Not broken. Still. I looked at the 3 of them and understood that they were not afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing access to me. I said nothing. The next morning, I arrived at my office before sunrise. I canceled every authorized user card. I removed Nicole's access to my business and personal accounts. I froze every secondary payment method. I stopped the automatic payments for Owen's car, insurance, training program, phone, subscriptions, and spending account. I did the same with Grace's vehicle expenses, travel installments, phone plan, and credit card. Then I called my bank. Then an attorney. The withdrawal had been made without my approval, and I intended to recover every possible dollar. I restructured the accounts, changed passwords, separated the business reserves, and created a system where no one could move a cent without my direct authorization. I did not feel victorious. I felt awake. The consequences began before lunch. Owen's card declined at a gas station. Grace's travel payment failed. Nicole called because the family phone plan had been suspended. By evening, Owen was shouting that his training program required immediate payment. Grace was crying because the trip she had planned for nearly a year was collapsing. Nicole stood in the hallway holding a stack of overdue notices, looking at me as if I had set fire to the house. "You can't do this to us," she said. I looked at her. "I already did. They called their biological father," he answered this time. Perhaps because desperation makes people persistent. Nicole put him on speakerphone and explained the situation. There was a long pause. Then he said he had no intention of paying for cars, phones, trips, training, or household expenses. "They're adults," he said. "They need to figure it out." Then he hung up. That was the moment their comfortable world finally revealed its foundation. Me. Owen lost his place in the training program because the payment deadline passed. Grace canceled her trip and lost part of the deposit. Nicole opened the household budget for the first time in years and realized her income would not cover even half of what I had quietly been paying. For 2 weeks, anger filled the house. Then silence replaced it. Grace came to my office first. She stood in the doorway with red eyes and no demands. "I'm sorry," she said. "I knew you paid for everything. I just never thought about what it cost you." It was not a perfect apology, but it was real. Owen took longer. Reality had to grind the arrogance out of him. He sold some of the equipment bought with my money. He lost his car when he could no longer cover the loan and insurance. He took a job at a warehouse, loading trucks before sunrise. For the first time in his life, he came home with swollen hands and exhaustion in his face. One night, he sat across from me at the same table where he had told me to leave. "I didn't understand," he said. I looked at him for a long time. "No," I answered. "You didn't care." He lowered his head. That hurt him. It was supposed to. Nicole apologized last. She admitted she had used my patience as permission. Every time the children disrespected me, she had chosen peace over loyalty. Every time she told me I would earn the money back, she reduced my life to income. "I turned you into an ATM," she whispered. I did not forgive her immediately. Forgiveness given too quickly teaches nothing. The family did not return to normal. Normal had been the problem. Owen kept his job. Grace began paying her own expenses. Nicole contributed a fixed amount to the household and lost all access to my business accounts. Every purchase above an agreed limit required discussion. No exceptions. No secret withdrawals. No guilt. No demands disguised as emergencies. I remained in the house. But I was no longer carrying everyone who refused to walk. Trust returned slowly. Respect returned slower. Some wounds never disappeared. They simply stopped bleeding every day. The $35,000 was eventually partially recovered through the sale of what had been purchased, and a legal repayment agreement. But the money was never the true loss. The true loss was learning that the people I called family had confused my love with obligation. And perhaps the only reason we survived was because I finally forced them to understand the difference. Kindness without boundaries becomes servitude. Sacrifice without gratitude becomes exploitation. And a family that only respects a man after his money disappears was never as strong as it pretended to be. So tell me honestly, was I wrong to let the bills collapse around them? Or was $35,000 the price they had to pay to finally see the man who had been standing in front of them all along? For 3 months, the house stayed quiet. Not peaceful. Quiet. There is a difference. Peace comes when people understand one another. Quiet comes when everyone is afraid of saying the wrong thing because they remember what the last wrong words cost them. Nicole measured every sentence before speaking. Grace paid her share of the phone bill on time and left the receipt on the kitchen counter as if it were evidence in a trial. Owen worked 6 days a week at the warehouse, coming home with dust on his clothes and resentment still buried behind his eyes. He apologized. He changed some things. But I could tell he had not forgiven me. Maybe he believed I had humiliated him. Maybe he still thought the $35,000 should have been his because I had enough to survive without it. Entitlement does not always disappear when consequences arrive. Sometimes it only learns to hide. I saw it in the way he watched me leave for work. I saw it when I replaced one of my service trucks. I saw it when Nicole and I discussed the legal repayment agreement, and his jaw tightened at the word repayment. He was working, but part of him still believed he had been robbed. That would have been almost funny if it had not been so ugly. The money he stole had become, in his mind, money I had taken from him. One evening in November, I came home late after repairing a furnace for an elderly couple who could not afford the full bill. I had charged them for parts and nothing else. That was the kind of decision I used to make without hesitation. Helping people had always come naturally to me. Now every act of kindness carried suspicion behind it. Nicole was sitting at the kitchen table when I entered. Her face was pale. Grace stood near the sink with her arms folded tightly against her chest. Owen was gone. I removed my coat slowly. "What happened?" Nicole looked at Grace, but Grace refused to answer for her. Finally, Nicole pushed an envelope across the table. Inside was a notice from the attorney handling the repayment agreement. Owen had missed 2 scheduled payments. He had also quit the warehouse job almost 3 weeks earlier. No one had told me. I stared at the letter, then at my wife. "You knew?" Her eyes filled with tears. "He said he had another job lined up." "Did he?" "No." "How has he been paying for gas?" Silence. I already knew. Nicole had been giving him money. Not from my accounts. She no longer had access to those. She had taken it from her own paycheck, then quietly reduced what she contributed to the household. The numbers had not seemed large enough for me to question. A few $100s here. Another few hundred there. I had assumed groceries were more expensive or that one of the utilities had increased. I should have checked. Trust had made me careless once. Hope had done it again. "He was struggling," Nicole whispered. "I was trying to help him get back on his feet." "No," I said. "You were helping him avoid standing." Grace turned away. She knew I was right. Nicole began crying, but the tears did not move me the way they once had. I had learned that tears can mean sorrow, fear, guilt, or simply frustration that the truth has finally entered the room. "Where is he?" She hesitated. "With his father." That surprised me. Owen had barely spoken to his biological father since the man refused to cover his expenses. Now, apparently, they had reconciled. Or at least discovered a shared enemy. "Me." I called Owen. He answered on the 4th ring. "What?" No greeting. No respect. Just irritation. "You missed 2 payments." He laughed under his breath. "I knew this was what you cared about." "What does that mean?" "It means you keep pretending this is about family, but everything with you comes back to money." I looked across the table at Nicole. She could hear every word. "You took $35,000 from me. For my future." "Without permission." Mom agreed. "It was not her money." His voice sharpened. "There. That is exactly what I mean. Your money. Your house. Your rules. You need everyone to remember that you own everything." I felt the old stillness return. The same cold silence that had entered me the day he told me to leave. "I never asked to own anyone," I said. "I asked you not to steal from me. You got most of it back. Because I forced you to return it. And you ruined my life doing it." There it was. The truth he had hidden beneath the apology. He did not regret what he had done. He regretted that I had stopped him. Nicole covered her mouth. Grace closed her eyes. I asked Owen whether he intended to honor the agreement. No. The answer came quickly, almost proudly. Then another voice entered the call. His biological father was beside him, telling him he did not have to let me control him. The man who had contributed almost nothing for years had finally found a role he was willing to perform. He could teach my stepson how to blame me. I listened until they finished. Then I said, "The attorney will handle it." Owen swore at me. His father called me vindictive. I ended the call. Nicole stood so quickly that her chair scraped across the floor. "Please, Mark. Do not take him back to court. I am not taking him anywhere. He signed an agreement. He is my son. And I am your husband." The words landed between us. 7 years of marriage stood inside that sentence. 7 years of sacrifice. 7 years of being asked to understand everyone except myself. Nicole looked down. "I cannot choose between you." I shook my head. "You already did." That night I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I called my attorney and instructed him to proceed. Owen received formal notice that afternoon. By evening, Nicole was begging me to reconsider, and by midnight, her former husband was sending messages accusing me of destroying the family. I read every message. Then I deleted them. Grace came to my office 2 days later. She closed the door and sat across from me, trembling. "Mom knew he planned to stop paying," she said. I felt something heavy settle in my chest. "How long?" "Since the first payment." Nicole had not merely helped him after he failed. She had known he never intended to honor the agreement. All those difficult conversations. All those apologies. All those promises about new boundaries and restored trust. A performance. They had waited for my anger to cool. They had mistaken restraint for weakness and forgiveness for forgetfulness. That evening, I packed a suitcase. Nicole stood in the bedroom doorway, crying. "Where are you going?" "To the apartment above my office." "For how long?" I closed the suitcase. "Until I know whether this marriage exists when my money is not protecting everyone from consequences." She reached for my arm. I stepped away. That movement hurt her more than shouting would have. Good. Pain was the only language this family seemed willing to remember. I left the house I had paid for and drove through the dark streets alone. Above my office was one narrow room, a small bathroom, and a window overlooking the service yard. It was cold when I arrived. Empty. Honest. I slept on an old couch beneath the sound of winter wind striking the glass. For the first time in 7 years, nobody needed anything from me. And for the first time, I had to face a question more frightening than losing $35,000. How many times can a man rebuild trust before rebuilding it becomes another way of betraying himself? The apartment above my office taught me how little a man actually needs. A bed. A chair. A locked door. No one waiting beside the refrigerator with a bill in hand. No one lowering their voice before asking for another favor. No one calling theft a family decision and betrayal a misunderstanding. For the first week, Nicole phoned every night. I let the calls ring. Then the messages began. She said the house felt empty. She said she could not sleep. She said Grace blamed herself for telling me the truth. She said Owen was furious. His father was encouraging him to fight the repayment agreement, and the attorney's letters were making everything worse. Not once did she say I had been right. She only described the pain my absence caused. That was the problem with my family. They noticed my value only when it disappeared. During the day, I buried myself in work. Winter had arrived early, and furnaces failed across the county. My crews were overwhelmed. I took emergency calls myself, crawling through basements until my knees ached, returning to the office after midnight with grease under my nails. The labor steadied me. Machines were honest. A broken motor did not pretend it loved you. A cracked heat exchanger did not apologize while planning to fail again. You found the damage, replaced what could be saved, and condemned what could not. People were harder. Nicole came to the office on the 9th evening. Snow clung to her coat. Her eyes were swollen, and she held a folder against her chest. I almost told her to leave, but something in her face stopped me. She placed the folder on my desk. Bank statements. Messages between her and Owen. Copies of transfers from her personal account. I lied to you, she said. I know. No. You know part of it. I remained standing. She opened the folder and showed me the messages. Owen had planned to miss every repayment. His father had convinced him that the agreement could be challenged because the original withdrawal had come through an account Nicole was authorized to access. Nicole had known. Worse, she had helped. She had sent Owen money for a consultation with another attorney. She had hidden the payment by reducing her share of the household expenses. While asking me to trust her again, she had financed an attempt to escape the consequences behind my back. The old anger should have returned. It did not. There are betrayals that cut. Others cauterize. This one burned away the last part of me, still waiting for an explanation that would make everything acceptable. Why are you showing me this? Her hands trembled. Because his father wants Owen to claim he gave us permission to use the account whenever we wanted. I stared at her. Did I? No. Will Owen say I did? She began to cry. Yes. The room seemed to shrink around us. I thought about the first Christmas after Nicole and I married. Owen had been 18. I bought him a set of professional tools because he said he wanted to learn a trade. He hugged me that morning. The tools remained unopened in the garage for years. Now he planned to use my generosity as evidence against me. And you? I asked. What will you say? Nicole looked toward the window. That was enough. I walked to the door and opened it. Mark, please. Leave. I came here because I want to fix this. You came because the lie became too large to carry alone. She flinched. I had spent years softening every truth so she would not have to feel its full weight. I was done protecting her from the shape of her own choices. You knew he stole from me. You excused it. You watched him insult me. You helped him violate the agreement. Now he wants you to lie, and you still cannot tell me whether you will refuse. He is my child. He is a grown man. He is still my son. And I was still your husband. The word was past tense before I consciously chose it. Nicole heard it. Her face collapsed. I did not comfort her. She left the folder and walked out into the snow. The next morning, I gave everything to my attorney. The case moved quickly after that. The bank records showed the withdrawal. The purchases showed where the money had gone. The signed repayment agreement proved Owen had acknowledged the debt. Nicole's transfers and messages revealed the plan to avoid payment. Owen's attorney withdrew. His biological father stopped answering calls. That was his talent. He could ignite a fire and vanish before anyone asked him to carry water. Owen came to my office alone. He looked thinner. The confidence had gone out of his posture. His car was gone, his training place was gone, and the warehouse would not take him back after he quit without notice. He sat across from me without being invited. You gave the messages to your lawyer? Yes. Mom trusted you with those. I almost admired the accusation. Even cornered, he could still find a way to make himself the victim. Your mother finally told the truth. She betrayed me. I leaned back. You took $35,000 from me. You told me to leave my own family. You signed an agreement you never intended to honor. You planned to lie in court. But the betrayal you recognize is your mother refusing to commit perjury for you. His eyes hardened. You always hated me. No. The answer came from somewhere deeper than anger. I loved you. That is what made this possible. He looked away. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Outside, one of my technicians started a service van. The engine coughed, then settled into a low mechanical hum. Owen rubbed his hands together. What happens now? You repay what remains. I don't have it. Then you work. No one will hire me for enough. You begin with what someone will pay. His mouth tightened. You could drop this. I could. Hope appeared in his eyes so quickly that it disgusted me. I let him feel it for 1 second. Then I continued. But I will not. He stood. So money matters more than family? No. Truth matters more than pretending. He cursed me and walked toward the door. Before he reached it, I spoke again. Your mother is losing her marriage because she protected you from every consequence. Your sister is afraid to speak in her own home. You have blamed your father, your mother, and me. When do you become responsible for the man you are? He stopped. His shoulders moved with one heavy breath. Then he left without answering. The hearing took place 6 weeks later. Nicole told the truth. Her voice shook, but she admitted I had never authorized the withdrawal. She admitted Owen knew the money was mine. She admitted they had both assumed I would accept it because I had always paid for everything before. The judge enforced the agreement. Owen was ordered to continue repayment through wage deductions once he found employment. Part of the remaining equipment was sold. The vehicle purchased with my money had already been surrendered. What could be recovered was recovered. What could not became debt. Afterward, Owen passed me in the courthouse hallway. He did not apologize. He only looked at me with the hollow hatred of someone finally forced to carry his own weight. Nicole stood several feet behind him. I told the truth, she said. I nodded. She seemed to expect more. Perhaps forgiveness. Perhaps praise. But telling the truth after months of lying is not heroism. It is the minimum payment on a much larger debt. I filed for divorce the following Monday. Grace called when Nicole told her. She cried and asked whether I would still speak to her. You told me the truth when no one else would, I said. My door is open to you. It was the only part of that family I could save without destroying myself. Nicole signed the papers 3 months later. The house was sold. She moved into a small rental. Owen found work with a delivery company. His checks were smaller than he wanted and lighter after the court-ordered deduction. But for the first time, they were his. I never recovered every dollar. I recovered something else. The right to stop confusing endurance with love. So tell me, when a family asks a man to forgive the same betrayal again and again, is leaving an act of cruelty? Or is it the first honest thing he has done for himself? Divorce teaches you strange lessons. People think the hardest day is the one when the papers are signed. It isn't. The hardest day comes later, when life keeps moving as if nothing happened, and you realize the world never stopped to acknowledge everything you lost. 6 months after the divorce became final, I was still living above my HVAC shop. The apartment remained small, but it belonged entirely to me. Every chair stood where I left it. Every bill reflected only my own choices. The silence no longer felt lonely. It felt earned. Business improved. Without carrying 3 extra adults, I finally had enough capital to expand. I bought another service truck, hired 2 apprentices, and signed maintenance contracts with several apartment complexes. For the first time in years, every dollar I earned stayed where I intended it to go. I should have been happy. Instead, I often found myself staring through the office window after closing time, wondering how 7 years could collapse into a stack of legal documents. Some nights I blamed Owen. Other nights I blamed Nicole. Eventually I accepted a harder truth. I had ignored warning signs because I believed love could replace boundaries. It never can. Grace continued calling every Sunday. She never asked for money. She never hinted at favors. Sometimes we talked about work. Sometimes about movies. Sometimes about nothing important at all. Those conversations reminded me that respect is built in ordinary moments, not expensive gifts. One afternoon she stopped by the office carrying 2 coffees. I thought you might need a break. I smiled before I realized I was smiling. Sit down, She looked around the garage where technicians were finishing repairs. You built all of this. I kept rebuilding it. There is a difference. I laughed quietly. There is. She hesitated before speaking again. Owen isn't doing well. I remained silent. He lost another job. Why? He argued with his supervisor. That did not surprise me. A man who cannot accept responsibility eventually believes every authority figure is the enemy. He says everyone is against him. I nodded slowly. People who refuse accountability usually feel that way. Grace looked uncomfortable. He still blames you. I know. He says if you had forgiven him, none of this would have happened. I looked toward the service bays where one of my employees was teaching an apprentice how to diagnose a faulty compressor. No, I said quietly. If I had forgiven him without consequences, he would have learned nothing. She lowered her eyes. I think he's starting to realize that. Weeks passed before I heard from Nicole. She asked if we could meet. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small diner halfway between my office and her rental house. She looked older. Not because of time. Because of worry. I wanted to thank you, she said. I raised an eyebrow. For what? For refusing to rescue us. That was the last sentence I expected. She wrapped both hands around her coffee. I hated you for months. I know. I kept thinking you destroyed our family. She looked directly at me. But the truth is, our family was already broken. You were the only one holding the pieces together. Either of us spoke for several moments. I should have defended you the day Owen told you to leave. You should have. I was afraid he'd stop speaking to me. And now? A sad smile crossed her face. He barely does anyway. She told me Owen had finally found steady work with a commercial delivery company. The court deductions continued every paycheck. He rented a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and struggled to cover his expenses. He says life isn't fair. I stirred my coffee. No one ever promised it would be. He works hard now. I'm glad. He still hasn't forgiven you. I didn't ask him to. Nicole's eyes filled with tears. I don't expect you to forgive me either. I considered the woman sitting across from me. Once, I would have sacrificed anything to protect her from pain. Now I understood that protecting someone from every consequence often guarantees they never grow. I don't hate you, Nicole. But I don't trust you. She nodded slowly. I don't know if I deserve that trust. Not yet. When we left the diner, she reached out as though she wanted to hug me. Then she stopped herself. Some distances cannot be crossed with good intentions alone. As I drove back to the office, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had carried me through betrayal. Justice had carried me through the divorce. Acceptance was carrying me the rest of the way. That evening I locked the shop, climbed the stairs to my apartment, and stood by the window overlooking the parking lot. The business was growing. Grace was building her own life. Even Owen, whether he admitted it or not, was finally surviving on money he earned instead of money he expected. The family I once imagined no longer existed. Perhaps it never had. But the man looking back at me in the window was no longer the exhausted husband who believed love meant endless sacrifice. He had learned that generosity without respect becomes exploitation, and that the strongest foundation any man can build is not beneath a house. It is beneath his own self-respect. If I had one chance to live those 7 years again, I would still choose kindness. But this time, I would make sure kindness had a lock on the door, a boundary around the heart, and a price for anyone who mistook it for weakness.